Elektra is one of those comic book characters that probably doesn't get her due, to be honest. A force in her own right, she's often overlooked while people go on about Wolverine, Superman, Batman and so on. She deserves more of a spotlight. It doesn't even matter her main ties with Daredevil, because she stood tall on her own time and time again, and most people now know who she is. That doesn't happen to every superhero. No one is going on about Calendar Man, are they? Still, doesn't mean she's perfect. Not by a long shot. I'm Simon from What Culture. This is 10 things Marvel wants you to forget about Elektra. Number 10, they brought her back without Frank Miller's permission. One day, Frank Miller killed off Elektra and it was badass. Then Marvel brought her back and apparently never even bothered to ask Miller about it. Which is a little, well, it's not cool. Messing with the creative vision that Miller initially had in mind doesn't really do much for his original plan. This resurrection in 1994 would never have happened if Miller had gotten his way too, although in fairness to the writers, she has been treated more or less pretty well since coming back from the grave. But still, he did this big angle, she died, and she's just back. Doesn't help what you were going for. Number 9, that 2005 movie. Remember that terrifying period a decade or so ago when Fox owned all the rights to Daredevil, and Ben Affleck was Matt Murdock, and Jennifer Garner was Elektra? Do you also remember just how bad the 2005 Elektra spin-off was? The worst bit was that not only did this terrible approach kill both Elektra and Catwoman movies, but no one involved realized it was because they kept making awful decisions. Stop that, and you could have made both of these work. The film currently sits on a tasty 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means it's pretty damn terrible. Contrast that with the Daredevil series on Netflix, which currently earns all the plaudits, and it makes you appreciate Marvel Studios all the more. Number 8, she once worked for the Kingpin. Although Marvel don't want you to forget about this arc per se, seeing as how it formed a part of Miller's incredible run on Daredevil, it's true that Elektra's time spent as Kingpin's assassin has been erased in the character's live-action portrayals. Both 2005's Daredevil film and the second season of the character's Netflix series elected not to use this element of the character's past. Considering the story is one of the most famous in the character's history, it's slightly strange how neither live-action interpretation opted to portray this aspect of her past. Number 7, she has an evil soul called Ernest, or whatever, I don't know how you pronounce that. But anyone familiar with the Daredevil mythos will know that it isn't without its supernatural elements. The Hand are a deeply spiritual organization, and various aspects of the comic book have deferred to various mythologies over the years. Things have, however, gotten almost too comic at times, and Ernest, or whatever they're called, is most certainly a prime example of that. Emerging in the wake of Elektra's resurrection as the physical embodiment of all the character's evil traits, Ernest just seemed to exemplify everything that was wrong with the character's return, and to a lesser extent, Marvel in the 90s too. No wonder the demon hasn't been mentioned for 20 years. Number 6, her role in The Defenders. If you haven't seen The Defenders yet, this entry will be spoiler heavy, so I've warned you. Elodie Young was one of the best bits about Daredevil Season 2, so it was initially a tad disappointing to hear that she'd be returning in The Defenders as a mind-controlled antagonist and not the Elektra we all know and love. The mind control aspect was one of the big pitfalls that the series failed to avoid, and things were made all the more annoying by the fact that the twist lacked the punch to really make it stick. We don't have a clue what's going on inside the character's head when she killed Alexandra, or why she still continues to fight the Defenders after regaining her memories, because the show just didn't feel like it was worth explaining. You can see the thought process behind the move though. Elektra had infiltrated and taken over the Hand in the comics before, and the aforementioned Ernest clearly had some sort of influence in constructing an evil Elektra. But again, the character's motivations remain as dimly lit as the series finale itself. No one can make out what is going on. Number 5, she was replaced by a Skrull. While we all might be clamoring for a Secret Invasion style storyline to hit the MCU in the wake of Captain Marvel's 2019 release, it's important to bear in mind that the comic wasn't really all that great. Elektra's treatment during the event was particularly woeful. Replaced by a Skrull at some point during her time in Japan, the real Elektra was left imprisoned on a Skrull ship. The fake one, however, was out and about doing normal Elektra things during Brian Bendis's and Ed Brubaker's respective Daredevil comic series, which is too goofy for words, really. Skrull deceptions make sense in certain contexts, but they can often devalue the work of other writers, especially when their presence is instrumental in the development of a specific story or plot. Number 4, everything involving Shadowland. As far as the comic book events go, Shadowland has to be one of the worst in recent memory. With his story about a demon-possessed Daredevil terrorizing Hell's Kitchen with the help of the Hand, it's little wonder that it had a negative influence on some of Marvel's other characters, particularly Elektra. While she's never been one for Matt Murdock's brand of attack, she reacts in an uncharacteristically callous fashion when faced with a request to return to New York and rescue him. She has a change of heart eventually and even brings Matt back to life at the end of the story, but that, along with the fact that no hero emerged from Shadowland for the better, makes it a particularly forgettable moment in the character's history. Things haven't really gotten that much better for her after Shadowland, however, particularly in recent years. Number 3, Thunderbolts membership and the Punisher. Despite Elektra having long been regarded as something of a lone wolf, she did at one point join Red Hulk's Thunderbolts and even had a fling with the Punisher. The idea of Frank Castle being used by the government, which this did touch on, was interesting enough as a concept to sell the series, but this whole run was mediocre at best. Elektra and Castle also do get it on, with both characters suffering greatly from the book's oddball feel and the team's even weirder lineup. For Elektra in particular, the series felt like a massive departure, with her presence on the team being one of the many misjudged appearances the character's made since her 1994 return. Number 2, she's been a director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Elektra, the world's deadliest assassin who is also the estranged leader of the Hand, is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. That just doesn't work. The character's enlistment in the agency came during the events of Civil War II, where she takes over from Phil Coulson as the organization's premier field agent. Perhaps the strangest thing about this move is that it came from the mind of Brian Bendis. Civil War II is by no means his best work, but still, it would have been nice to see the Elektra we know from the comics. An assassin first and foremost, and one who would never concern herself with this particular brand of superheroes. Number 1, everything to do with the X-Men. Although Elektra is primarily a Daredevil character through and through, her involvement with the Hand has led her to cross paths with none other than Wolverine on occasion. This time spent together, however, is probably something Marvel would soon rather see forgotten. We're not just talking about Enemy of the State here either. The two have shared the page many times, with the short-lived 2002 series by Greg Rucka being a particular highlight, and it helps they work well together. For now, however, expect any further Elektra Wolverine adventures to be placed on the back burner. Know of anything else Marvel wants you to forget about Elektra? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can even let What Culture know on Twitter at WhatCulture, or head on over to WhatCulture.com and read some articles. My name is Simon from WhatCulture.com, and I'll speak to you again soon.